The night my daughter-in-law compared me to her mother, I didn't know it would end with FBI agents at her gala. I remembered the table before the words, the soft light hanging over our small Charleston dining room, the way one chair stayed empty, the way dust had settled on the wedding photo in the hutch, though I'd wiped it that morning. I set a pecan pie to cool and told myself that quiet still meant safety. Thanksgiving has a smell where I live: brown sugar on sweet potatoes, butter sinking into cornbread, rosemary stitched through a turkey I'd seasoned before dawn. I ironed the good tablecloth, the one with a pulled thread near the corner, and lined up my grandmother's silver like a promise. Through the open window, I heard a football announcer's voice drift from a neighbor's TV, the low roar of a crowd cheering. Somewhere down the street, a child laughed. The world was still at peace. Jacob arrived first, smiling the way people do when they want to seem fine. His hug was soft, uncertain, carrying the scent of laundry detergent instead of confidence. He placed flowers on the counter but didn't unwrap them. Sierra followed, her heels tapping quickly against the hardwood, her phone raised and camera rolling for her followers before she even said hello. She scanned the room, the crocheted runner, the cranberry bowl, the mismatched plates, and her lips pressed into something polite but distant. "Everything looks traditional," she said finally, lowering her phone. "Traditional has a way of feeding people," I answered, trying humor as a bridge between us. We passed dishes, we said grace. Sierra narrated stories of her mother, Gloria Blank, the motivational speaker, the icon hosting rooftop fundraisers and coaching women to step into abundance. Jacob nodded in strange rhythms, like someone half listening to two conversations at once. At first it was small. She compared my china. "Mom prefers minimalist white. It photographs better." She compared my recipes. "Mom's chef caramelizes the pecans with Himalayan salt." She compared my home. "Mom's loft has such pure lines, so much light." Each sentence landed like a thin slice. I kept chewing. The knife slipped once from my hand, clattering softly. I told myself it was butter. Jacob's eyes darted toward me, wide, apologetic, before he looked back down at his plate. That quick flash in his gaze broke something tender inside me. My son's loyalty was now a cautious balance between two women. Sierra raised her glass. "To mothers," she said brightly, "to women who build lives that inspire generosity." Her tone was rehearsed, almost performative, as if she could still hear an invisible crowd applauding somewhere behind her. I could have let it pass. I could have stayed small, safe. Then she turned to Jacob, not me, and with a smile sharp as glass said, "You'll never be half the woman my mother is." Air drained from the room. The clock ticked louder. The sound of football from the TV next door carried through the walls, another world cheering while mine went still. Jacob's fork froze midair, his jaw tight, eyes flicking between us. His silence screamed louder than her words. I pushed my chair back without scraping, making sure I stood straight. "Well," I said, calm as the storm behind my ribs, "then she can start paying your rent." The sentence sliced through the quiet. Sierra blinked twice, as though her lens couldn't focus. Jacob's face paled. A tiny muscle in his jaw jumped, and I realized he was afraid not just for me, but for the peace we'd just buried. Sierra gave a breathy laugh, brittle as sugar. "We don't need— I'm sure you don't," I said. "And I'm sure your mother's elegance covers utilities too." The air thickened until it hurt to breathe. I gathered plates, stacking them carefully, because movement felt safer than staring at what we'd become. In the kitchen, I turned on the faucet, letting the rush of water fill the silence. My reflection in the window looked older than I felt, the lines deeper under the soft yellow light. I thought of the years dividing paychecks into envelopes, of Charles's calloused hands and the way we'd promised that hard work could build safety. Now I wasn't so sure. Sierra appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. "I didn't mean to offend," she said, tone polished but cool. "My mother just believes in higher standards." "I know how standards work," I answered, eyes on the pie cooling by the window. She rechecked her phone. "We should go," she said over her shoulder. Jacob didn't move. He folded his napkin once, twice, a white flag from a nation already surrendered. I carried the pecan pie to the table, placed it in the center, golden, perfect, waiting. No one reached for it. Sweetness without appetite makes a room lonelier than hunger. I cut one slice anyway and set it before the empty chair. Some traditions, even if broken, deserve to run their course. After they left, I washed the dishes in the order my mother had taught me. Glasses first, then silverware, then plates, and finally pots. Order is a prayer. Outside, the marsh breathed salt, and the crickets started their night song. Through the walls, the football game blared again. A touchdown. A cheer. As if the universe had moved on without me. I dried my hands and stood by the doorway, the untouched pie catching candlelight like an apology no one would say. I could tell myself it was a misunderstanding. I could put the knife away, label this night family drama. I could wait for an apology that would never come. But the silence in that house no longer sounded holy. It sounded hollow. A mask I'd worn too long. That night I realized silence wasn't peace. It was surrender. Sometimes betrayal doesn't arrive with a scream. It tiptoes through your mailbox. 2 days after Thanksgiving, I found the envelope. It looked ordinary, cream-colored, slightly bent from rain, wedged between grocery coupons and a church bulletin. Piedmont Property Management was printed neatly in the corner. My stomach gave a quiet twist. I didn't own any property besides my little house in Charleston, and I certainly didn't rent one. I set the letter aside while the coffee brewed. Outside, December sunlight broke weakly through moss-covered oaks. The neighborhood was quiet except for the hiss of a lawn sprinkler and the muffled bark of a dog 3 houses down. It should have been a peaceful morning, the kind where you fold laundry, hum along with gospel radio, and forget family tensions. But peace, I was learning, doesn't always mean safe. The letter waited until I was ready to stop pretending. I slid it open with a butter knife. A folded notice slid out, printed on glossy paper. Tenant reminder. Magnolia Lofts, Unit 24. Rent due December 5th, $900. 0 cents. My name sat at the top in bold black ink. Evelyn Carter. For a full minute, I couldn't breathe. My kitchen light flickered, as if the house itself felt it too. I checked the date. Recent. My heart thudded a rhythm I hadn't known in years. I grabbed my laptop and opened my online banking account. There it was, a series of withdrawals, each $1,900, 0 cents, neatly deducted on the 5th of every month for almost a year. I remembered every Thanksgiving plate, every envelope of savings Charles and I had counted after he passed, how I'd promised myself never to let those numbers fall out of order. And yet here I was, the woman who balanced ledgers for a living, now discovering her own had been rewritten. I closed the laptop when I heard a knock. Evelyn. It was Marcia, my neighbor and oldest friend, the kind who brings you soup when you're sick and gossip when you're not. She stepped in without waiting. She frowned. Downtown, fancy spot, yoga studios, startups, young folks paying too much for exposed brick. That's the one. Apparently I live there now. Marcia blinked, then leaned closer. You mean your name's on something? I handed her the letter. She read it twice, lips parting. Evelyn, this ain't a mistake. This is fraud. Her voice made it real. I took the letter back, smoothing the creases. I can't accuse anyone yet, but if someone's using my name... I didn't finish the sentence. The thought felt like a bruise under the skin. Marcia crossed her arms. That daughter-in-law of yours? She's always flashing money, right? New car, new phone, new handbags. I stared out the window. The pecan tree outside shivered in the wind. She says it's all business expenses. Gloria's got her in PR, you know? Skincare brand, sponsorships, that kind of thing. Honey, Marcia said, lowering her voice. Gloria's not just charming, she's dangerous. I saw her on one of those live streams talking about manifesting wealth. That woman doesn't manifest, she manipulates. Her words sat heavily between us. After she left, I stood at the sink again, the exact spot where I'd stood Thanksgiving night. Water ran over my hands until they turned pink. I whispered, maybe it's just a mix-up. Maybe Jacob knows. When I called him, his voice sounded muffled and tired. Hey, Mom, everything okay? I got a letter about an apartment. I said. Magnolia Lofts. They have my name listed as a tenant. Silence stretched. I heard traffic behind him, a car horn, then his soft inhale. It's nothing, just a work thing. Some deliveries are short-term. Don't worry about it. Jacob, they're pulling $1,900, 0 cents a month out of my account. Another pause. Sierra said she handled it. She told me it was temporary. He exhaled. Mom, please, I'll talk to her. Just don't make a big deal out of it. That sentence landed like a door closing. For years, Jacob had been the gentle one, the boy who apologized even when others were wrong. Now he sounded like someone defending a world I wasn't allowed to enter. When the call ended, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the faint ring of coffee on my cup. I could still hear his tone, that fragile mixture of guilt and obedience. Whatever Sierra and her mother were building, he was trapped inside it. That night, sleep refused me. I paced the house, replaying every conversation I'd ever had with Sierra, the comments I'd brushed off. Mom knows how to invest. Mom can make opportunities appear. Each line now sounded like a quiet rehearsal for theft. Near midnight, I opened the drawer where I kept important papers. My will, Charles's death certificate, Jacob's old college forms. I found it. A temporary power of attorney form from last year, signed during Jacob's surgery. My signature was beside Sierra's. The expiration date had long passed. But what if she had used it before it did? My throat went dry. I closed the drawer and leaned against it, heartbeat loud in my ears. At dawn, I returned to the table and wrote down numbers, dates, amounts, file names. My pen trembled. It felt like accounting for ghosts. The sun rose, lighting the photograph of Charles on the wall. His smile, calm, certain, seemed to ask what I'd do next. By afternoon, I drove to Marcia's shop downtown. The streets smelled like rain and gasoline. "You're sure you don't want me to call my cousin at the credit union?" she asked as I pulled into the parking spot. "Yet," I said. "I need proof first. Real proof. Then be careful. People like Gloria don't lose quietly." Her warning followed me all the way home. That evening, another envelope waited in my mailbox. Same return address, same neat print. My hands shook as I tore it open. This one wasn't a notice, it was a receipt. Piedmont Property Management, confirmed in the corner under authorized signer. My name appeared again. The signature looked perfect. I ran my thumb over the ink, as if touch could prove what sight couldn't. It felt like betrayal had learned my handwriting. I laid the letter beside the pecan pie dish still sitting on the counter, the crust gone stale. Sometimes the evidence of what's wrong doesn't look dramatic. Sometimes it's just paper, and the quiet knowledge that someone you love has rewritten your name. That night, as the house settled into stillness, I whispered to the dark, "What are you doing, Jacob? What have you let her do?" The wind answered, carrying the faint echo of laughter from the neighbor's TV. For the first time, I realized my kindness had a paper trail. The forgery was perfect, except for the trembling in my hands when I saw it. I sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd once taught Jacob multiplication tables, and stared at my laptop screen. The cursor blinked on a digital document. Lease agreement, Magnolia Lofts, Discreet, Unit 24. My name, Evelyn Carter, appeared 6 times. My address, my phone number, my social security, even my signature, that looping, tilted flourish I'd used since college, sat at the bottom. Only I hadn't signed it. The world outside still slept. Street lights washed the empty road in amber, and the hum of the refrigerator sounded too loud. My hands hovered above the keyboard, trembling so much I had to steady them with a coffee mug. The smell of stale pecans lingered. I zoomed in on the signature, tracing the pixelated lines with my finger. Every curve of the E, every slanted C, perfect. But the pressure was wrong, the line too smooth. My handwriting always hesitated before the second letter, a small human flaw. Whoever had done this knew me well enough to copy everything except my hesitation. My phone buzzed beside me, startling me so hard I spilled coffee. The screen lit with a message from Jacob. "Heading to work early. Love you, Mom." simple, ordinary, and suddenly unbearable. I wiped the coffee with a towel, breathing shallow. I needed answers. By mid-morning, I was downtown. Charleston's winter wind nipped through my coat as I pushed through glass doors labeled Piedmont Property Management. The office smelled of printer ink and lemon disinfectant. A young woman at the desk looked up, polite but wary. "Can I help you?" "I'm here about a lease," I said, holding out the printed copy. "It has my name, but I didn't sign it." Her smile faltered. "One moment, ma'am." She disappeared through a side door, heels tapping fast like a clock counting down. While I waited, I watched reflections ripple in the glass wall, rows of cubicles, men in blazers, phones ringing. All these people moving through their workday, and here I was trying to prove I hadn't agreed to pay rent for a life I didn't live. The receptionist returned with a man wearing an expensive watch and a cautious smile. "Mrs. Carter, I'm Mr. Bell. You're listed as the guarantor for Unit 204. Everything seems legitimate in our system." "Guarantor?" I repeated. "For who?" He tapped a few keys. "Sierra Blake," he said after a pause, "and Jacob Carter. It's a joint lease." My pulse hammered in my ears. "That's my son and daughter-in-law." "Yes, ma'am, signed last January. Monthly payments have been prompt until—" "Well, we had a late notice last week." I gripped the back of a chair. "Can I see the signed document?" He printed another copy and slid it across the desk. Same signature, neat and sure. My name is underlined with pride. "Could someone else have signed this electronically?" I asked. He frowned. "We use DocuSign. Verification goes to the email provided." I already knew what he'd say next. He pointed at the line. "Email ecarter@atlanticmail.com." That wasn't mine. Sierra had made that address years ago for convenience, she said, when helping me apply for online bills. The room tilted slightly. "Thank you," I said softly, gathering the papers. Outside, the wind sliced sharper. I sat in my car, heart thudding against the seatbelt, and dialed Jacob. It rang 3 times before he answered. "Mom, hey, can we talk later? I'm at the office." "No," I said. My voice shook. "Jacob, did you know Sierra used my name on a lease?" Silence. Then a sigh. "Mom, please," she explained it. "It's just a business front, tax benefits or something. I'll handle it." "Tax benefits?" Almost laughed. "You mean fraud. That's what this is." He sounded younger suddenly, like the boy who used to hide bad grades. "It's not like that. Sierra said you agreed, remember, when she helped you with online forms after Dad died?" I agreed to nothing. He went quiet. I could hear traffic, the muffled slam of a car door. "Mom, don't start something you can't stop," he said finally, voice thin. "You don't know how this works." I whispered, "Then tell me?" But the line had already gone dead. I sat in the car until the cold crept through my sleeves. My reflection in the rearview looked foreign. Same face, new cracks. By evening, I had printed and stacked all the documents in a neat folder. On the cover, I wrote one word: Magnolia. The name felt ironic now, flowers that bloom through rot. I made tea, poured it into the chipped mug Charles once used. His picture hung above the mantel, the same easy smile. I whispered to him, "They're using my name, Charles, our name." The kettle whistled too loudly. I turned it off, heart pounding. Later that night, I sat at my desk and opened my email to draft a message to the bank. Before I could type, a new notification appeared. Incoming message, unknown number. Stop asking questions. You don't know who you're dealing with. The text glowed on the screen, simple and cold. I froze, the phone heavy in my hand. My first thought was Jacob, then Sierra, then someone else entirely, someone who thought silence could still scare me. I stood, checking each lock, every window. Outside, headlights swept across the wall, pausing as a black car slowed near the curb. It idled there for a long moment. Then, as if satisfied, it rolled away. The house was silent again, the kind of silence that presses against your ribs. I sat back down, forcing my breath steady. My hands trembled over the stack of papers. My proof, my pain, my story. I opened the drawer and slipped the phone inside, shut it softly. I thought of Jacob as a boy, tracing letters at this same table, smiling when he got them right. "See, Mama? That's your name. Now someone else had written it for me." Outside, the streetlight flickered, and I caught my reflection in the window. Tired eyes, trembling lips, but not broken. Someone had forged my signature, but they had no idea what that meant. Someone had stolen my name, but they had no idea who it belonged to. That night, I gathered every page and set them beside the cold coffee cup. Tomorrow, I will stop being afraid of my own handwriting. Someone was going to learn what peace looked like when it finally picked up a pen. By the time the church bells rang Sunday morning, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to be the quiet one anymore. The sanctuary of St. Augustine's always smelled like lemon polish and candle wax. Light streamed through stained glass in long ribbons of color, painting the pews with warmth that didn't quite reach my bones. As the choir began Blessed Assurance, I sang the notes automatically. Still, my heart was counting different numbers, withdrawals, dates, names. After service, I waited until most folks had gone before approaching Deacon Harris, the church's part-time lawyer and full-time keeper of other people's secrets. "Deacon," I said softly, "I need advice. Hypothetically, if someone used your signature to move money—" He stopped buttoning his coat. "This someone sounds like they have your face, Sister Evelyn." I exhaled. "They used my name, my son's wife, maybe even her mother. There's a lease, an email, and I just got a message telling me to stop asking questions." He frowned deeply. "You keep those documents safe, and you don't confront them alone. Forgery, fraud, misuse of power of attorney, that's a full plate of sin and a side of prison time." "Then I guess it's time they get served," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He handed me a card. "Bring everything tomorrow. We'll start a record. Truth leaves a paper trail." That night, the cold hit harder than usual. Charleston winters don't bring much snow, just a wet chill that sneaks through every window frame. Brewed tea and spread my papers across the table again. Bank statements, the lease, that awful text message screenshot. My own handwriting stared back at me like an accusation. I noticed something I hadn't before, a recurring transfer, small but consistent. $450, 0 cents every third Thursday. Destination clenched. I clicked through my online bank history, dozens of those same payments, stretching back months. A fake lease was one thing. Funneling money through my name to fund Gloria's fake charity was another. That's when I opened the ledger, my old accounting book I hadn't touched since retiring from the charter school. I began copying every transaction, color-coding them like I used to teach my students. Red for deceit, blue for silence, black for me. Steady, factual, unbreakable. I wasn't looking at numbers anymore. I was looking at fingerprints. The next morning, I took the binder to Deacon Harris's office, a modest space tucked behind the fellowship hall. He read in silence, glasses perched low. Finally, he looked up. "They've been using you as a financial shield. If this GPF isn't registered properly, it's laundering, plain and simple." I nodded, my throat tight. I trusted them, Deacon. I gave them my house key, my accounts, and even my recipes. I thought love was enough insurance. He leaned forward. "Love isn't paperwork, Evelyn. Keep these copies, lock the originals in a safe, and start thinking if they fall, are you ready for the whole truth to come out?" I didn't answer, because deep down, I knew the whole truth hadn't even shown its face yet. That evening, my doorbell rang. Through the frosted glass, I saw Sierra, hair perfectly curled, coat too thin for the weather, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Evelyn," she said sweetly, stepping inside before I could invite her, "you've been asking questions. That's dangerous." "Dangerous for who?" I asked. She sighed like a disappointed teacher. "For everyone. Gloria's under pressure. You think this little witch hunt will end well for Jacob?" My heart jolted. "Don't you dare use my son to threaten me." Her lips curved. "It's not a threat if it's true. He could lose his job, his reputation, everything." I pointed to the table where the ledger lay open. "You already took everything." She froze when she saw it, pages of transactions color-coded, neat as a confession. "You kept records?" I taught math for 20 years. I know how to balance things. For the first time, the mask cracked. You don't understand, she hissed. Gloria just needed collateral. You need to stop digging. Gloria doesn't like liabilities. The word hung heavy. Liability. Not mother-in-law, not Evelyn. Just a name on paper, worth what it could buy. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. You're smart, but you're old-fashioned. You think truth wins. It doesn't. Power does. I smiled faintly. Then you've clearly never seen an old woman who's done playing nice. The door shut behind her with a sound like punctuation. That night, I added one final entry to the ledger, under notes. They think this is about money. It's not. It's about my name. The next morning, I visited the courthouse, a quiet and gray building against the cloudy sky. The clerk helped me file for a fraud alert and notarize my statement. I left copies with Deacon Harris, locked the originals in my safe, and mailed one to myself, unopened, time-stamped. Evidence always tells the truth, even when people don't. Back home, I brewed another pot of coffee and sat by the window, watching the neighborhood kids play. For a moment, it was almost peaceful, until my phone buzzed again. Another message, different number. You think paper will save you? I smiled. Papers never saved me, I whispered to the empty room. But it's buried plenty of liars. The clock ticked. The sky outside deepened into bruised blue. I closed my ledger, exhaled slowly, and looked at the framed photo of Jacob on the mantel, his graduation cap tilted, eyes brown with possibility. I'm not trying to ruin you, I murmured. I'm trying to remind you who raised you. That night, I slept with the ledger on the nightstand. The house creaked, the heater hissed, but inside me something had gone still. The kind of stillness that comes before a storm you've stopped running from. Because truth doesn't knock. It breaks down the door. And when it does, I'll be ready. The ballroom glittered like a promised gold, champagne towers and smiles polished to perfection. Every step I took on that marble floor echoed louder than it should have. I wasn't meant to be here. Not according to Gloria Parker. But then again, liars never expect their ghost to show up dressed in emerald. I had chosen that gown carefully, the one Charles used to call my queen's dress. Tonight wasn't about elegance, it was about power, and the reminder that dignity doesn't fade with age. At the check-in table, a young woman scanned the guest list. Her lips parted when she saw my name. "Oh, Mrs. Carter, you're our key supporter?" I smiled, though my pulse thudded in my throat. Apparently, the room was alive with the hum of polite deceit. Men in tailored suits laughed too loudly, women clinked glasses, and waiters floated past like ghosts balancing silver trays. At the far end, under a banner that read the Gloria Parker Foundation, Empowering Women, Building Futures, stood Gloria herself, all emerald silk and diamonds, basking in her kingdom of illusion. Sierra lingered behind her, camera ready as always, whispering to donors and keeping one eye on me. I found a seat near the back, close enough to watch, but far enough to think. The folder in my clutch pressed against my palm, my quiet weapon. The forged lease, the banking records, the rejection letter from the IRS, all neatly ordered. When the lights dimmed, Gloria took the stage, her voice as smooth as syrup. Friends, tonight we celebrate abundance of faith, of ambition, of generosity. Together we've built a foundation that changes lives. Applause thundered. Cameras flashed. My heart stayed still. She went on, weaving stories of empowerment and success, names I'd never heard, programs that didn't exist. Every word tightened the thread between my ribs. Then she smiled toward my section. And none of this would be possible without our generous guarantor, a woman of grace, strength, and faith, Mrs. Evelyn Carter. A spotlight burst across my table. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Gloria's smile widened, perfect and poisonous. I rose slowly. People clapped, uncertain but obedient. I could feel every eye, the admiration, the curiosity, the doubt. When I reached the stage, Gloria extended her hand. "Won't you say a few words, dear?" I took the microphone, my fingers steady. "Thank you, Gloria, and thank you all for believing in empowerment. Tonight, I'd like to talk about truth, the kind of empowerment that doesn't come with champagne. A few nervous chuckles. Gloria's eyes darted to Sierra, who was already fumbling for her phone. I opened my clutch and drew out the first paper. The lease. "This," I said, "is a contract for Magnolia Lofts. It bears my name, my signature, and my credit. It also bears a lie." A murmur rippled across the room. Cameras turned toward us. Gloria's smile twitched. "Evelyn, dear, perhaps this isn't—" "Oh, it is," I cut in, my voice calm, almost because when someone uses your name to build their dream and leaves you with their debt, that's not partnership. That's theft. I lifted the next page. Here's the bank trail. Thousands taken monthly from my account, disguised as charitable funding. And here, I held up the IRS letter, is proof that this foundation was denied nonprofit status twice. Silence. Heavy, breathless. Somewhere, a glass shattered. Sierra rushed forward, whispering harshly, "You don't understand what you're doing." I turned to her, eyes level. "I understand perfectly. You used my name to guarantee your mother's fantasy. You forged my signature, and you told my son I'd agreed." Gasps spread like wildfire. Gloria stepped closer, her mask slipping. "You're confused. This is slander." I handed the microphone back, but kept my voice loud enough to fill the hall. "Confused people don't file fraud alerts, Gloria, and they don't bring notarized statements." I gestured to the side of the stage, where two men in suits, one from the Attorney General's office, one from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, stood waiting. I had invited them quietly a week ago. Gloria's face drained of color. You wouldn't." "I already did." The journalist raised his badge. "Ms. Parker, can you comment on allegations of financial fraud tied to your foundation?" Pandemonium broke loose. Donors began murmuring, then shouting. A woman in the front row stood up. "You promised scholarships for my daughter. Where's that money?" Another voice joined, then another. Gloria's poise cracked. Her hand trembled as she reached for Sierra. "Get the car!" Sierra's phone slipped from her grasp, clattering onto the floor. I stepped back, letting the chaos swirl. The music had stopped. The lights felt too bright. For the first time, Gloria looked small beneath her own banner. As I turned to leave the stage, Jacob appeared near the door, pale, shaken, eyes full of everything he'd refused to see. "Mom," he whispered when I passed him. "What have you done?" "What you wouldn't," I said softly. I told the truth. He looked at me, torn between shame and relief. "They'll hate you." I smiled faintly. "They'll remember me first." Outside, the night air was cold and clear. Reporters were already gathering near the entrance, flashbulbs stinging like frost. Behind me, the ballroom was unraveling, shouts, phones ringing, the sound of illusions collapsing. I stopped on the steps and looked up at the stars, the same ones Charles and I used to trace when life was simple. For the first time in years, the air didn't feel heavy. It felt honest. My phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. "You'll regret this." I typed back with steady fingers. "You already do." I dropped the phone into my clutch, took one last look at the glittering chaos, and walked away down the marble steps, the hem of my emerald gown whispering behind me like the closing of a chapter. The morning after the gala smelled like rain and reckoning. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since dawn. Reporters, neighbors, even church friends leaving voicemails that began with, "I saw the news," and ended in, "We're praying for you." But prayers couldn't soften the weight sitting on my chest. The truth had finally walked into the light, and like all truths, it brought shadows with it. The Atlantic Journal-Constitution headline glared from my screen. Gloria Parker Foundation under investigation. Fraud, forgery, and family betrayal. Below it was a photo of me at the podium, mouth open mid-sentence, eyes fierce. They called me the whistleblower widow. I wasn't sure if that was respect or pity. Outside, the street was quiet, except for a crow perched on my mailbox. The neighborhood had grown cautious overnight, cars slowing when they passed my house. People love a scandal until it's too close to their picket fence. I brewed a pot of coffee and sat by the window, watching the drizzle bead along the glass. My reflection stared back. Older, yes, but not smaller. The emerald gown hung over the chair, still smelling faintly of perfume and war. When the doorbell rang, I didn't need to look. I already knew the rhythm of those hesitant knocks. Jacob stood on my porch, rain soaking his hair, his tie loose like a man who'd forgotten how to breathe. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. "Can I come in?" he asked. I nodded. Inside, he glanced around like he was seeing my house for the first time. The cross-stitched curtains, the clock that had ticked through every argument, every silence. His eyes fell on the ledger lying open on the coffee table. "So it's all true," he murmured. "Yes." I poured him a cup of coffee and set it down. "All of it." He sat heavily, the cup untouched. "She's gone, Sierra. Packed her things last night. Said she needed time to think." "Thinking," I said, "was never her strongest suit." He gave a broken laugh that sounded more like a sob of grief. "You know what's strange? I'm not even angry at her anymore. I'm angry at myself for letting it get this far, for letting you carry everything." I wanted to be angry too, but seeing him like that, all I felt was the familiar ache of motherhood, loving someone who keeps breaking your heart and still wanting to mend them. "You're not the first man blinded by love," I said gently, "but you can be the one who learns from it." He looked up, voice trembling. "Mom, how do I fix this?" "You start by not fixing me," I said. "You fix you." We sat in silence, listening to the clock tick. Outside, thunder rolled like distant applause. Later that afternoon, I drove downtown for the court hearing. The city felt washed clean, the sky pale, the streets slick. Reporters swarmed the courthouse steps, cameras flashing. Inside, Gloria sat at the defendant's table, her emerald dress replaced by a gray suit. The diamonds were gone, but the arrogance still lingered like perfume. Our eyes met only once. There was no hatred left between us, just the quiet understanding of two women who had finally dropped their masks. The prosecutor spoke for nearly an hour. Documents, transactions, digital trails, every lie neatly catalogued. Gloria said nothing, only twisted her wedding ring like she could turn time backward. When it ended, she was led out through the side door, her heels silent against the tile. And that was it. Years of deception collapsed into a few pages of evidence and a single word: guilty. Outside, the sky broke open, rain falling in steady sheets. I didn't run for cover. Let it fall, I thought. Let it wash the lies off the pavement. A week later, peace began to feel like something I could touch. I started attending a writing workshop at the community center, something I'd always dreamed of, but never dared to do. I called it Balancing the Books of the Heart. When it was my turn to read aloud, my voice trembled, but didn't falter. I told them about numbers that don't add up, about love that costs more than money, and about the day I learned that forgiveness isn't surrender, it's freedom. The class clapped softly, not like an audience, but like witnesses. At home, I'd begun cleaning out old drawers, Charles's watch, faded photographs, unopened birthday cards. I found one from Jacob back when he was 8. "To the best mom ever. I'll always protect you." I smiled. Maybe promises made in childhood don't expire. They just take time to come true. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Jacob came by again. He'd cut his hair, traded his designer jacket for a work shirt. There was humility in his walk, a weight lifted, and a new one carried with grace. "I got a new job," he said. "Warehouse supervisor." "It's honest work." He hesitated before speaking. "I don't expect you to forgive me." I placed my hand over his. "Forgiveness isn't earned, Jacob. It's given, when the heart is ready. Mine's getting there." His eyes glistened. "I don't deserve you." "No one ever does," I said softly. We both laughed. Genuine laughter. The kind that rebuilds walls instead of breaking them. That night after he left, I sat by the window again. The rain had stopped, leaving the world rinsed and quiet. My ledger rested on the shelf, its final page marked with a single line in blue ink. "Truth doesn't fix everything, it just lets you stop pretending." I closed it gently. Then I poured 2 cups of tea, one for me, one for Charles, and carried them to the porch. The air smelled of magnolia and new beginnings. For a long while, I watched the streetlights flicker on one by one like small promises keeping watch. I wasn't a victim anymore. I wasn't a guarantor, a widow, or a headline. I was Evelyn Carter, the woman who learned that peace isn't the absence of betrayal, but the presence of truth. And for the first time in years, the world felt light enough to breathe. There comes a point in every family story when silence becomes heavier than any secret. Evelyn Carter reached that point the night she realized her own name had been stolen. Not her money, not her house, but the meaning of who she was. Betrayal doesn't always arrive with a slammed door or a shouted insult. Sometimes it comes disguised as gratitude. When the ones you love most use your trust as currency, something inside you fractured. Yet that same fracture can become a window, letting the light of truth pour through. Evelyn learned that forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the refusal to let betrayal define your future. She could have sought revenge, but revenge only mirrors the pain that built it. Instead, she chose dignity, the quiet kind that doesn't demand applause but earns respect. Her story isn't just about lies and signatures. It's about how far a mother's strength will stretch before it finally stops bending. There's a particular cruelty in realizing your love was mistaken for permission. For years, Evelyn believed that endurance was a sign of loyalty. She thought keeping the peace meant keeping quiet, but silence, she discovered, doesn't keep peace. It keeps chains. The moment she broke them, she didn't just reclaim her name, she reclaimed her story. That's what betrayal underestimates most, the power of a person who has stopped being afraid. Every act of deception in a family leaves behind invisible bruises. You stop trusting laughter, start questioning kindness, and wonder if love is just another transaction. But the miracle of truth is this: it doesn't erase scars, it teaches you to live with them honestly. Evelyn's victory wasn't public exposure, it was private peace. She understood that justice isn't always a courtroom sentence. Sometimes it's waking up one morning and realizing the liar no longer controls your heartbeat. We all want to believe our families are safe havens, but sometimes the storm comes from inside the walls. When that happens, you have two choices: drown quietly or learn to swim in your own strength. Evelyn swam. Through doubt, through guilt, through the voices telling her to let it go. And on the other side of that storm, she found still water, not because life became perfect, but because she finally stopped pretending it was. Her story reminds us that blood isn't the only thing that binds family. Truth does too. And when truth breaks those bonds, it's not the end, it's the beginning of something real. We live in a world where appearances are currency and silence is cheaper than confrontation. But Evelyn's courage whispers another rule: protecting your peace is not betrayal. Allowing deceit to continue is. So if you've ever been the one holding a family together while they quietly pulled you apart, remember, you don't owe anyone your silence. You owe yourself your freedom. Your dignity isn't measured by who believes you. It's measured by how firmly you stand when no one else will. And perhaps the greatest act of love isn't forgiveness or endurance. It's truth, spoken aloud, even when your voice shakes. Because truth, like Evelyn learned, doesn't fix everything. It simply lets you stop pretending. Have you ever faced a betrayal inside your own family? A moment when trust became a weapon? Tell us your story in the comments below. Your voice might help someone else heal tonight. If this story touched you, type 1 in the comments and subscribe to Auntie Tales, where every week we bring you stories of family, betrayal, justice, and healing that remind you, even in broken homes, the heart can still rebuild itself.